We begin today at the Mishnah towards the bottom of Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis. This Mishnah continues this similar theme to what we learned about before. Before we were speaking about one woman testifying for another woman that got captured, if she's still pure or not. So here it also talks about two men that are kayanim, and each one is going to come and testify for the other that he's still kosher. V'chein shnei anashim. You have two men. So and so two people, they come from overseas into a city, and we have no idea who they are. Are they miyuches? Are they not? So these two people, so ze'ayim mekayin ani. One person says about himself, I am a kayin, and v'ze'ayim mekayin ani. And the other one, the Mishnah, right in the Mishnah, you see? And the other person says, I am a kayin. So ein anamonin. They're not believed to testify for themselves. This is similar to what we learned before regarding these two women. Each one is not believed for themselves. But ubizman she'meidin zeh. If each one is testifying for the other, so then these two people that came together, and Reuven says for Shimon, he's a kain, he's miyuches, and Shimon says for Reuven that he's a miyuches, so then they are believed. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ein mailin lekahona al pi dechad. We cannot elevate a person to have the status of being a kain, in other words, a good yichus, just by the testimony of one witness. When it comes to yichus, you have to have a proper edus to prove his yichus. Amar Rabbi Lazar said, "Ey Messiah b'makim she'esh eidin." When can you not rely on the words of one aid if there are people that are challenging his yichus? If there's someone that's saying, this person, you can't trust his yichus, something's wrong with him, so then you're going to have to have two aidim to verify this. Aval b'makim she'ein eidin. But in a case where there is no eidin, there is nobody that's challenging this, so then ma'ilin l'kahuna al pi dechad. So then you could elevate him to be a kosher kayin, even with the testimony of one aid. So as Rashi points out, the difference between what Rabbi Lazar is saying here and what the Tanna Kama is saying here is, Tanna Kama was speaking in a case where you have two people that came into the city together. Now something looks a little bit suspicious there in that case, because if each is saying testimony for the other, it looks like there's a collusion over here. They made up in advance. I'm going to say this for you that you're kosher. You're going to say for me. So like this, we're going to be good yichus. So, but who is speaking about Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar is saying you could trust an eid echad as long as there's no challenge, and also if it's not one that's saying for the other. So then we don't have that suspicion. Then we could trust an eid echad. Another opinion here in the Mishnah, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel and Mishum Rab Shimon ben Azgan, Ma'ilin lekahona al pi echad. We could elevate a person to the status of kahuna just with the testimony of one witness. So it's not clear exactly what Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is adding. How is his opinion different than before? The Gemara will explain this later. Zak the Gemara, Kol Hani Lamali. Why do I need all these Mishnayos that we learned from the beginning of the Perek? So this actually goes back to the Mishnayos from the beginning of the Perek. Not all of them, but many of the Mishnayos are basically based on one point, and that is HaPesha Asa Hu HaPesha Heter. That when you have a person that speaks himself, and he's just speaking alone, even about himself, and usually we don't trust the Eid Echad, and for sure not if he's saying something for a money matter that pertains to you. But nevertheless, if you're the one that gave us the information about this from the beginning, so then whatever you say, we trust you from the beginning till the end. And we had this in many different cases. We had it regarding the money matters, regarding a person that came and said, this property belonged to your father, but I bought it from him. Then we had it regarding the case of a shtar, when Aiden came and said, we signed this shtar, however, we were honest, we were puzzle Aedis when we signed the shtar. Then we had it also regarding different scenarios of a woman that comes and says, I was married, but I got divorced. I was captured, but I'm still pure. In all of these cases, the reason why we believe her is because of a pesha asa or a pesha heter. Over here as well, the previous Mishnah, when it says one woman is testifying for another regarding her purity, it's also because of a pesha asa. In a case where there are edim that told us that this woman got captured, her friend won't be able to testify for her. Right? And over here in this Mishnah as well, we're speaking about two people that are coming, and each one is testifying for his friend. It's also based on the fact that because he's speaking without us having any prior knowledge, so therefore he's believed. So the question of the Gemara here is, all of these cases that we just brought, that are based on this rule, of this concept of a pesha asa, pesha heter, why does the Mishnah have to teach us so many cases? Says the Gemara as follows. This Mishnah is also pesha asa, pesha heter? I believe so, yes. What's the pesha asa, pesha heter? The aid is speaking alone. Why Taka do we trust this aid when he speaks alone? Huh?
Because I'm a kain. Huh?
So maybe it doesn't include this case. Let's see the Gemara weiter. I believe it does include this case as well, because it's the same concept as Peshasa, meaning we don't have any other information besides what you are saying, so that's why we trust you. So the Gemara Tzrichi. So we need all these cases here. Going back to the first case of the Mishnah, where there it said Maider Rabbi Shua regarding a property. Over there, what's the case? The person is saying, property that I'm living in, it belonged to your father. By him saying that, he stands to lose this property. He's saying something which has real significance, that it belongs to your father. So why did he say such a thing? The only reason he said it was because of the conclusion of his statement. It belonged to your father, however, I bought it from him. So he never intended to say that it belongs to you. He just intended to clarify why it belongs to himself. We view the entire statement as one thing. But when it comes to Edim that are saying, we signed this document, by them saying that we signed this document, there's no loss of any money that would be for them by saying this. So over here, maybe we should divide their statement into two. When they said that this document, we signed it, they just verified the signatures, and therefore this is a kosher shtar. Then when they come and say, no, but when we signed it, we will pasal edus, they just sort of retracted of what they said. And maybe what really happened over here is they changed their mind. They started saying that it's a kosher shtar, and they wanted to be machshir the shtar, and then they changed their mind and they decided to say, no, the shtar is pasal. We view over here, there is room to view the two parts of the statements as separate things. So not necessarily should they be believed. Okay? Whereas in the case of a person that came and said, this property belonged to your father and I bought it from him, there's no reason to view that statement as two separate things. Obviously, they only meant to say the second half, that I bought it. Why would a person want to be ready to lose the property that he owns? So therefore, you have to have the case of the Edim as well regarding the shtar, because that's a bigger chiddush. In the reverse, the Gemara says you could say the opposite. Vitana Edim. If it would say the case of the witnesses testifying about their signatures, I would say Mishum de la Alma. Over there, when they come and say that these signatures are pasal, or actually when they come and say that the signatures are pasal, they're not saying anything that pertains to themselves. They're not gaining anything by saying that. So therefore, we believe them. They sound like they're saying something which is the truth. They're saying, look, this signatures, it's our signatures, but we're pasal edus. They're not standing to gain by saying that, so there's no reason why not to believe them. Just a moment. Aval ihu. But going back to the case of the person with the property, when he says, it belonged to your father, but I bought it from him, the lanafshay. Over here, by saying that I bought it from him, you're gaining by this. You're saying, and therefore belongs to me. So then, a malay. So over here, maybe we should not rely on the pesha asa because he's gaining by saying this. So therefore, you need to have the chiddush here as well, that I follow the pesha asa or pesha hita, even though you are gaining by the conclusion of your statement. So these are these two cases. So but now there's something that's similar with both of these cases, and that is that they're both dealing with money matters, whether with a person's own property, whether with a document that someone else is using regarding a loan or regarding a sale or regarding any money matter. So both of these are situations of money matters where there's a chiddush in each case that we rely on the pesha asar. But now we have the mishnayos afterwards. If we would say only those two cases, I would say mishum de mamayna. They're both dealing with money. Aval eishes ish, when it comes to a woman that comes and says, I was an eishes ish and I got divorced, the surah. Here we're dealing with a serious matter. Regarding her being an eishes ish, there's a chiyuv kares. So over here, in such a case, maybe I don't trust the pesha asar to be matir a chiyuv kares. So that's the chiddush regarding Isser. Now the next case, it said in that Mishnah, Nishbeisi utahayrani, a woman that says that I was captured but I'm still pure. So it's also an issue of Isser, that she's not allowed to get married to a Kayin if she had a relation with someone else. So why does it have to say another example of an Isser? Lamali, why does it say this? So the Mishnah says, so the Gemara that it says, it's only Taka only says is for the continuation of the Mishnah there. Because regarding that case, the Mishnah wants to tell me afterwards that that if after she got married, then Edom come and say about her that she was captured, that after the fact, once she got married already, or as the Gemara actually said before, after the heter of her to get married, so then we don't retract the heter again. So the chiddush in that case is really this point of it regarding the Edom. But regarding the case of pesha asar, there is no unique chiddush in this case. But the Gemara now clarifies this based on what we learned before already. This is a good answer. According to the opinion that says that when it says there in the Mishnah that Eidim came after the fact, it's taka going on this case of a woman that said that she got captured but she's still pure. But the one that says that line in the Mishnah actually goes back to the Reisha of the Mishnah. When she was saying that she's an Eishes and she got divorced. So you don't need this second case of her being captured to say this Chiddush. Why is the Mishnah bringing this additional case of a woman that got captured and says that she's pure? So according to this mandama, the answer is it's because of the following Mishnah. Because it wants to bring in the story about the two women that got captured. And the case of these two women, so one woman is believed to say about the other one that she's tahira. That's why it's saying the whole story about captured, even though there's no chiddush of peshasa in that case, but there's a chiddush regarding the two women that one could say edus for the other one. But the Gemara asks on that itself, two women that are captured and each one is saying edus for the other one, that they are mutter. What's the chiddush in that case? Why would I think that one should not be believed to say edus for the other one there? Answers the Gemara, because I would think to say, nechush legoimlin. Let us be afraid that when you have two women and each one is saying edus that the other one is good, is pure, they're colluding with one another. Each one is saying it for the benefit of the other. Right? So we can't trust them. Maybe that's what we should be concerned about. Kamash Malon. So that's the chiddush of that Mishnah to say that even though it's two and each one is saying for the other, we're not concerned about this. So that was the main chiddush here. And then we had over here the Mishnah that we just learned, the last Mishnah. So what's the chiddush over here? And the two men that came into a city, and each one is testifying about the yichus of the other. Why do I need this case? Over here, it's the same thing, that each one is coming and saying information without us having any prior knowledge, and therefore we believe them. And even this point that we just said, that we're not afraid for goimlin. We're not afraid that each one is saying it for the other's benefit. So we already saw that in the previous case regarding the two women. Says the Gemara, because the main point is they wanted to bring the machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, whether we trust an Eid Echad for yichus only when there's no challenge to their yichus, or even when there is a challenge to their yichus, I still trust what they're saying. Okay, so we have the answer of why it says all of these cases in the Mishnah.
Interesting. When it came to Isurim,
yeah.
You didn't worry about it. Now you have
worrying about the goimlin.
No, if it's a machlekes between. If you trust the woman by Yisurim, then you should sure trust these two people about Kayanim.
Yeah, anachanami. But over here there's a chumrah of yichos, and then therefore when there's a oiridin, maybe you shouldn't trust. Okay. So we learned in Abraisa, ani kayin. Person comes and says, I am a kayin. My friend is a kain as well. So you believed, based on what you're saying, that now your friend could go ahead and eat truma as a kain. But you're not going to be trusted to say that he's a kain, that he has the proper yichos, that he could get married to a wife. Now, what exactly is he speaking about? Usually, when it comes to a marriage of a kain, we're more concerned to know about who the woman is, whether the kain is allowed to marry this woman. What does it mean to say here in the Gemara that we believe this edus about the kain that he can marry this wife? So according to Rashi, the way Taisus quotes Rashi is, it's not only b'chlal regarding kahuna, it's b'chlal regarding his yichus. If we have a concern about this person, that he might be a mamzer, or he might be a not kosher ger, a nosen, or a mamzer, so we believe this edus to say about this person that he's a kosher yid, and he's even a kosher kain, and therefore he can marry whoever he wants. That's what it's really talking about. It says lav dafke b'negei to kahuna. Again, so yeah, but I'm just saying that the point of lahasiya isha is regarding his kashrus, regarding his yichus. So we believe the edus of the Eid Echad for him to be able to eat trumeh, but not regarding him to be able to get married as a kosher yid. Ad shiur, unless you have over here, again, you have two people that come into a city. So this Braisa says you're going to have a third person here. Ad shiur gimel, you have a third person, so now, shnayim idem alzeh, shnayim idem alzeh. So then, once you have a third person, so you can use two edus that will testify for one that he's a kosher kain, and two edus that will testify for the other that he's a kosher kain, and now he can get married to whoever he wants. Rabbi Yehuda says, af ein enem al achila b'trumah. I don't even trust one to testify for the other that he could be allowed to eat truma. Until you have three here, shnai mid mazeh, shnai mid mazeh. So therefore you have two witnesses testifying for each one of them that is a kosher kain, even just to be able to eat truma. So now the Gemara wants to understand what's the basis of this machlokes here. L'meimre, shall we say that Rabbi Yehuda chayish legaimle? Rabbi Yehuda doesn't allow one to testify for the other that he's a kayin to be able to eat truma because he's concerned that the one is doing a favor for the other. They're not honest. They're just helping one another. And the Rabbanan are not concerned about this, that they may be helping one another. So therefore, for truma, they could testify for one another, even if for yichus were more machmer, but for truma, we believe them. But if that's the pshat in their machlokes, the question is, we learned somewhere else that Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan argued about a similar thing, and over there we see that their opinions are reversed. Because we learned in the Mishnah that what happens if you have chachamarim shenichnesu leir, you have the chamarim, people that are driving with their donkey, and they come into a city. They come into a city with their merchandise. Vama echad mehen. And one of them comes and says, Shali Chadash, the merchandise that I have is new. And Rashi says over here, in this case, Chadash, it's talking about produce that's not yet fully ripened, or it's not such good produce. Shchaveri Yashan, my friend is already fully ripened and it's better quality than mine. So he's testifying for his friend. My friend has better quality than me. And then he says also, Shali Eni Mesukim. What I have, the Trumas and Maestros, we're not separated of it yet, it's not ready to eat. What my friend has, that's already rectified, or it's taken care of, it's ready to eat. One is not believed to say Eidus for his friend, that his friend's produce is better than his. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, he is believed. We trust what one is saying about the other. So here we see that their opinions are reversed. Before, it was Rabbi Yehuda that said that one is not believed to say for the other that he can eat truma. And here it's Rabbi Yehuda that's saying that one is believed to say about the other that his produce that he has is better than mine, and it's taken ma'aser already from it. So that's the question here. You're right, we're going to have to switch the opinions here. And one of these brises, or the first brise, or the second one is actually a Mishnah, we're going to have to switch the opinions that they should fit. Abaya says, really, you don't have to switch the opinions. There's a difference. What is this Bryce speaking of? Rather, it's a Mishnah. What is this Mishnah speaking about? Speaking about bidmai. Speaking about when you're talking about produce that comes from these two individuals that have the status of an Amma Oretz. These two people come into the city. We don't know them as chaverim, right? When it comes to anything with produce, so you have people that have the status of a chaver. A chaver is a person that we know that he separates the trumas and maisis properly, and Amaretz is a person that we can't trust necessarily that he gave the trumas and maisis properly, and therefore the produce in his possession has the halacha of demai, which means we don't know what this is. So because that Mishnah is speaking about Dmai, so b'Dmai hekilu. This situation where there's produce, where we're not sure if the Trumas and Maises were taken of it or not, nevertheless, Chachamim were lenient about this. And the reason is because Raiv Amei Aretz Maisrin Hein. Even the Chachamim instituted regarding Dmai that we should take Maisers again, but nevertheless the truth is that most Amaratzim do take the Maisers from it. And therefore in this case, Rabbi Yehuda was lenient and said that we could believe one for what he's saying regarding his friend. One second. So the Gemara now asks, so Rav asks on this answer of Abaye, the Rabbi Yehuda Kashya. Was this only a contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and therefore you're answering me according to Rabbi Yehuda? Why regarding the kain, to have one kain eat truma with another, over there you don't believe them, but by Dmai you do, because by Dmai we're more lenient. So you're only answering the contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The Rabbanan loy kashya. But the contradiction in the Rabbanan's opinion is not a contradiction. Before the Rabbanan said that you believe to have one say that the other could eat truma, and over here regarding the Dmai, not believed. So you see, Adarab, according to the Chachamim, we're more stringent when it comes over here to the situation of these Amaratzim regarding Dmai. So you're not answering the Rabbanan's opinion. So therefore, Rav says as follows: Ela de Rabbi Yehuda like Kashia kedeshanina. The answer you gave for Rabbi Yehuda, that's a good answer, because Rabbi Yehuda held by Dmai, there's more of a reason to be lenient. We could rely on most of the Amaratzim giving the Meiser. The Rabbanan like Kashia. Why is there no contradiction here according to the Rabbanan? Kedama Rami Bachame, like Rami Bachame, sorry, Rab Chame Bar Ukva, that is. Kedama Rami Rab Chame Bar Ukva in another place. And what did he say? B'shekli unnasai b'yadai. What we're speaking about over here is when the person has the tools of his work with him in his hands. In other words, you had these two people that are riding on their donkeys and came into a city with their produce, and it's clear that these are not people that have just had produce that they meant to keep for themselves. They came in as salesmen. They're here to sell their produce. In such a case, we're more concerned that each one is trying to do a favor for the other. You have two people come into a city with produce in Eretz Yisrael in those times when you have to give maasros. Why would we trust these two people that look like amaratzim, that what they have and what they're selling is good produce? So therefore over here there's a strong reason to believe that one is doing a favor for another to testify for him that it's good. That's what Rab Chama bar Ukva said in another place. So Hachanami over here, this is what we say. The reason is b'shekli nasei biyadai. When a person is coming in with the tools of his trade in his hands, so we're very concerned. That's why Chachamim did not believe them here. Whereas by the case of the Kayin and the Trumah, we're not concerned that they're trying to cover for one another. Now, v'heichet with the Rab Chama bar Ukva. Where is it that we saw Rab Chama bar Ukva said this idea when each one is coming in with their tools in their hand, and therefore we don't believe them? It's regarding a completely different subject. Ahadet Nan, there's a Mishnah in Masechta Tares that discusses a situation with pots. Hakadar, you have a potter. So he has pots that he made, the earthenware pottery, Sheniach Gdei Raisav, and then, so he made pots and they were all tar, and they were pure. But he left them, and V'yarad Lishtois, Mayim and Ayari, went down to drink some water. So now, when he was away from his pots, we're not sure what happened to them. Maybe people that are tamei touched them. So the halacha the Mishnah says is hapnimiya is the pots that are inside tahires. Those we're not concerned that anyone touched them. They're tar. Vachitzani is those that are further outside tameyes. Those we're concerned that somebody touched them and therefore they're tamei. That's the Mishnah. But on this the question was asked. But vatanya in a brayso we learned elu ve'elu tameyes. Person that left his pots, the ones that are inside or outside, they're both tamei. So on this, Amar Rab Chama bar Ukva answers b'shekli nusai biyadai. If it's a potter that has the tools of the trade that he's selling them in his hands, so in such a case, because he's selling these pots, so people that come to buy, they touch everything. They touch the pots that are on the inside, they touch the pots that are on the outside. So in such a case, everything will be tamei. He has the tools of the trade that he uses as a seller. In other words, he has a table and he has different things that it's clear that he's selling these pots. He doesn't just make the pots for himself. So in such a case, we're afraid people touch them. Now there's a third braisa about this subject. Vatanya, in the third braisa, it said elu ve'elu tahiris, that if a person left these pots and he went to drink water, whatever he left inside or outside, it's all tar. We're not concerned that anyone touched it. So regarding that, Rab Chama bar Ukva said, B'she'en kli nusei biyadai. When he does not have the tools of his trade to sell them in his hands, so it's private. It's clear that he's not selling them. So why would we be concerned that anyone touched it? So now the question is, ve'elo hadet nan. So the Mishnah where it said hapnimi is tahiris, the ones that are on the inside are pure. Vachitzeni is tamei, the ones that are outside are tamei. Heiche mishkachas la. What is the pshat over there? We just said if he's selling, so then it's all tamei. If it's just private, it's all tahir. So in what case do we say that it depends if it's inside or outside? So the answer is, he left them right near the road. The smicha l'reshus harabim. He left these pots near the road. Umishum chifufi reshus harabim. People that are traveling on the road and they bump up onto the side of the road, and all these people that may be tamei and their garments go over and into these pots, and once it goes inside the aver of the pot, it can make it tamei. So therefore we say the outside ones could have become tamei this way. But the ones that are further inside, we're not concerned that the people from the road, that they rubbed up against the wall or against where these pots are to make them tamei. This is where the statement of Rab Chama bar Ukva came from. The Gemara now goes back to the argument between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon that we had before regarding the Trumah, that there was a contradiction over here from what he says regarding what they say regarding Trumah to what they say regarding these two people that came in with their produce in a city. The Gemara says over there's a completely different shot. Or I can tell you that the basis of their machlekes is totally different. What did we think before? Before we thought that their whole argument is based on is one doing a favor for another. Now the Gemara says no, it's a whole different thing. Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanon b'mailin mitruma leyuchsin kamiflagi. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanon are arguing whether when we see a kohen that eats truma, do we use that as a basis to now say that he's a kohen that's miyuchas? That's what they're arguing about. If yes, so then I can't rely on this testimony of an Eidecha to have him eat Truma. Because if people will see him eating Truma, they'll say, oh look, he eats Truma. That means he's a Kayin Miyuchas. But if I'm not Maila mit Truma Miyuchsin, if when I see someone eating Truma, I don't use that as a basis to say that he's kosher, that he's Miyuchas, so then I could be kosher him for Truma, and I'm not concerned that it's going to be used to make him a Miyuchas. That's what they're arguing about. But it's not about a concern of one doing a favor for another. It's a completely different thing. So now based on this, the Gemara brings a few questions. So the question was asked, could you use what you have in a document regarding a person that it says in the document that he's a Kayin, and based on this, you cannot say that his yichus is that he's a Kayin? So the Gemara wants to understand what exactly does it say in the document? Hey Chidami, what's the case here? Does it say in the document, the person writes, my name is so-and-so Kayin, Chasamti, aid, and I sign as an aid. Right? In other words, we're talking about signatures. When a person signs a star, he signs, HaKayin. So the Gemara says, how does that prove anything? Man kamasid ilaveh. Who exactly is testifying about the person that signed himself, his name, as a Kayin? Who's saying testimony about him that he's a Kayin? So the Gemara says, no, the case is as follows. The question is, the Chsiv Bey, it says in a star, Ani ploini Kayin lavisi mana mi ploini. I, so-and-so, Kayin, borrowed money from Pliny, from this person. So it says about himself that he's a Kayin. And then, v'chasimu sahadi. And now two Eidim sign on this star for this loan. So now the question is, could we accept these signatures also to verify that this person is a Kayin? What's the halach here? Do I say, Amanasha b'shtar k'masadi? The Eidim that signed the star, what are they focusing on? They're focusing on the loan, on the money that's written in the star. They're not looking at the lineage, they're not looking at the fact that it said that he's a Kayin. Or perhaps, no, when they sign a star, they look at every single detail it says in the star, not only the money, the fact that it says that this person is a Kayin, and they signed in it, they're signing on that fact as well. So Rav Huna and Rav Chisda argue about this. Chadomar Mailen. One person says that yes, you could elevate a person's status based on the fact that it's written in the star that he's a Kayin. Chadomar, the other opinion is a Mailen. You can't elevate a person's status based on the fact that it's written in the star that he was a Kayin. The Eidim are focusing on the money of the star, not on the fact that he's a Kayin. Another question, the question was asked, could you elevate a Kayin to a status of being a Kayin miyuchas if you see that he duchens, he's doing birchas Kayinim? Is that enough of a basis to say that he's probably a Kayin? So now the Gemara explains, this is a question according to the opinion that we had before, Mailin mitrum liyuchsin, that if a Kayin is eating trumah, then you could rely on that he's miyuchas. And the question over here is also going to be a question, Lamandama ein Mailin, that when we see a Kayin eating trumah, we can't elevate a status to being miyuchas. So according to both of these opinions, we'll have a question regarding birchas Kayinim. And the Gemara explains, it'll be a question according to the one that says that if he's eating trumah, he is a Kayin miyuchas. So now the question will be as follows. I would say, Hani mili, maybe, why do we elevate over there the Kayin status? Trumah. That's only regarding trumah. The oven misahi. Person that's not a Kayin, a zar, that eats trumah, there's a punishment of misa b'dei shamayim for this. This is a really severe matter. So therefore, if you see him eating trumah, you could be maila him to yichus. Aval nesiyas kapayim, this is what I say. A person that is duchening and he's not a Kayin, what is he being over on an essa? It says Kesubos as b'nei Yisrael that only a Kayin benches and not a zar. So since he's only being over on an essa, it's not as severe. So therefore, you can't be maila. Or maybe there's no difference whether it's an issue of a chiv misa or isar asay. Same thing. Once he's duchening, he's doing birchas Kayinim, you can be mailen. It's also a question according to the opinion that says that you can't be maila someone from eating trumah to being a Kayin miyuchas. So I could say as follows: Hani mili. When is that true? Trumah. That's only regarding trumah. The misachle b'tzinet. Trumah you eat privately, so therefore a person is not so careful about this, so you can't be mailim from trumah to yichus. Avon nesiyas kapayim the b'farasya. Over here, a person is doing this publicly, comes into a shul in front of everybody, goes and he's duchening, and he's not concerned about what people are going to say. Are you a Kayin? What are you doing over here? So the fact that he's doing this publicly, ilav Kayinu. If he wouldn't be a Kayin, kul hayla mechza finish nafsha. A person doesn't have such a chutzpah to go in public and go to duchen if he's not a Kayin. So definitely we could be mailim from this to be a Kayin. Or we can say, Loishna, no, there's no difference. If we're not Maila from Truma, we're not Maila too from Birchas Kainim as well. So the Gemara brings the machlokes. Rav Chisda and Rav Avina argued about this. Chadama Mailin. One says from Birchas Kainim we could elevate a status. The Chadama a Mailin. The other said we cannot elevate a status. Amalei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak l'Rav. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak asked Rav this question: Ma lahalas minasis kapayim liyuchsin? Can we elevate a kohen status from duchening to yuchsin? Amalei. So he told him we learned this already. Plukte the Rav Chisda and Rav Avina. This is an argument between Rav Chisda and Rav Avina as we just quoted. Now, Hilchas, so what he really meant to ask him is, I know this argument, but what is the halacha? Amalei, so he brought him the following braisa. Anoma sniti yadaina. It says in a braisa as follows: the Tanya, Rabbi Yosi says, Gedai lo chazaka. Look how great a chazaka is. The cheskas kasher. So you can rely on the status of a person being kosher. Look how great this is. And he brings him the pasuk of what it says when the Yidden came from Galus Bavel to build the second base of Mikdash. And Emma, pasuk there says, Bnei Kainim. There was families of Kainim, and Bnei Chavya, Bnei Akaitz, Bnei Barzilai, different families. Asher lokach mibnois Barzilai Galadi Isha. They married from Barzilai Galadi as wives. And Vayikral Shmam, and if their family name was on her name. So Eila Bikshuk Savama Mesyachsim, they were looking to find a lineage to show their yichus that they're still kosher to Kainim. When the Yidden were in Bavel, many of them got intermarried, they assimilated, and therefore a lot of the Yidden that came up from Bavel were not kosher. And many Kainim couldn't serve in the Beis HaMikdash unless they showed their yichus. V'lei nimtzu, and they couldn't find their yichus. Vayigalum in akohune, so therefore they became impure and they couldn't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. Vayayimer hatershasa lehem, which I believe is Ezra. So he said to them, Asher lo yoichlu mikaydesh hakadashim. So these Kainim, since they can't show their yichus, they can't eat from the kachim in the Beis HaMikdash ad amoid kayin le'urim v'tumim, until we'll have a kayin with an urim v'tumim, which is not on the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Rashi says this is like saying a person, you're going to have to wait until Mashiach comes, because the urim v'tumim will only come back when Mashiach comes. Amar lehem, but he said to them, Harei atem b'cheskaschem, however, the status that you had until now, your chazaka that you had till now, that you could keep. To now go ahead and eat kachim, that not. But whatever you were doing as a kayin until now, that you could keep. When you were in Galos, what would you eat there as a kayin kachia gvul, which refers to truma? The truma you did eat over there. So avkan b'kachia gvul. Over here as well, you could eat your truma. But the kachim of the karbanis, to serve in the Beis HaMikdash and to eat the kachim of the Beis HaMikdash, that not. Now, if you're going to say that we could elevate their status from Birchas Kainim to then say that they're miyuches, sahani over here, these individuals, kiv in the Parsi Yadayu, since until now, even when they were in Bavel, what was their status? That they were also duchening, sa'asila sakino. So now based on this, they're going to make them miyuches. How could Ezra tell them, keep your status like you had it until today, you can eat your truma, which also would mean that they could bench Birchas Kainim, but if they're going to bench Birchas Kainim, then we're going to elevate their status to be miyuchas, and they're not miyuchas. They didn't have a document to show that they're miyuchas, and then they might come to serve in the Beis HaMikdash as well. And says the Gemara, Shani hacha deriya cheskayu. No, over here, we're not concerned about this because we see that their chazakah that they had, on one hand, we allow them to keep their chazakah, but their chazakah is also weakened. Because he told them clearly, you're not allowed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So on one hand, he's keeping their chazakah, but at the same time, he's not allowing them into the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, we're not afraid that people are going to come and think, oh, this is a kayin miyuchas, he can marry whoever he wants. And the Gemara proves this, if you're not going to say so, Laman Dama, Mailan Mitruma Liyuchsim, we had before one opinion that says that a kain that eats truma, for sure you could elevate his status for yichus, so why are we concerned? Kivin Da'achli Betruma, if he's allowing them to eat truma, so why are we concerned that Asila Sakinu, that they're going to come to be elevated, that we're going to use this as a proof for their status for yichus? So the answer is that because their yichus has been, their chazakah, that is, has been weakened, so therefore we don't elevate their status. So just like we say that according to that opinion, it's the same with Birchas Kainim. The fact that we allow them to bench Birchas Kainim is we're not concerned that we're going to elevate their status because their status was weakened, because we're not letting them serve in the Beis HaMikdash. That is a continuation on this subject. We'll see you, Mr. Shem, tomorrow.